How do we make sure all that data and education helps our learners? AI-powered education is next. Casey and I are here today to talk about data or data, whichever you prefer to call it. It is often something that frightens educators and makes them nervous that they don't know how to really maybe interpret it correctly, or if they even have time. And it's something you should not do by yourself sometimes, because it's better to do it in a group and then you get many different perspectives. And so first I thought I'd talk a little bit about a little bit of education and pedagogy, and then Casey's going to talk about how she sees it in practice, and that's what we'll do today. So first of all, just always thinking about how can we reduce learning gaps, just constantly thinking, how can we serve all our learners? And this data can actually help us do that. And in a moment, Casey's going to talk about how it's in places we don't even think about, where we can get that information and have AI help us as well. Just again, making sure that that we personalize, again, to reduce those gaps, that we identify the real needs of those learners. And then how about like retention and attendance? And I think Casey is going to talk about that. And then also just that cultural sensitivity. Like when we do get trained and we do say, okay, it's time to sit in and dig into the data and so forth, are we doing it with a cultural mindset about, again, how can we reduce any kind of educational gap? So Casey, how is it that in practice that you're seeing it play out in your school system?
Well, I think our school system is not necessarily unique to what I'm going to be talking about. I think there are many schools in our state and in our nation that are using tools just like this. But I don't think that our minds think of it as an AI tool for education. Instead, they think of it as like an administrative tool, right? Because it's giving us data that's going to help us inform decisions. And one example is Educlimber. So Educlimber is this really amazing tool that our district has available to us through a local grant, through funding that luckily is in place for the next 3 years. So we're capable of using the features of this without needing to worry about that financial burden. And I know a lot of schools don't have that flexibility, but I still think that there's some things that schools that don't have Educlimber could take away from this. And primarily what Educlimber does is it's a full analytic platform that allows administrators and teachers and parents and students to see the full student, not just academic progress, not just behavioral progress, not isolated things that we have to try to figure out what it all means. Instead, it sort of compiles this information together. And I think the biggest thing that I like about Educlimber is that it allows for early intervention. And I think that's one of the things you and I had kind of talked about, is like, why is it important that we have this conversation about how schools use data? And a lot of it is to intervene before there's a problem. And so what's so great about this is we don't have to have the person, the individual tracking the attendance, tracking their scores on MCAs or whatever state mandated tests you might have. They're not having to manually look at these things. And yet we still have a human aspect to it, where somebody is able to see the data and interpret it and come to a conclusion where we will help the student find success. Right. And so, I know it's kind of vague, but yeah.
No, I think that's, again, a good place, that when I meant like you're not alone, I'm a real team of people looking at that. Again, then those diverse voices are coming to the table to make sure that we are guaranteed that we're not, that we are hearing multiple perspectives of what could be influencing those numbers. Sure, the numbers are factual, but what influenced them, and how are they, grabbed and put together and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is a different type of conversation than we've had in the past, because we've talked about tools like Brisk and Quizizz, and those are really awesome AI so classroom support tools that give us excellent data as well. I know, I can definitely see how a student is progressing on different on an assignment, maybe goals, objectives, standards. And that to me is like the magnifying glass on it, right? Like I'm really narrowed into how this student is doing in my room. But then what we're talking about with Educlimber and with real data-driven interventions is holistic. This child that is in my classroom 1 hour in a day is a person for 23 other hours of the day. And like, what is their life like? And how is that influencing their success within my room? And so I think that having an AI tool to help sift through that, to track that attendance, to track the scores of the MCAs, and as a school district, we get to decide what is on a priority list, or maybe we level these things out, this data, so that it gives us the information that we're wanting, and we can say attendance is important for us because we know that when students show up here, they're more likely to have a connection. Like, we make that decision. We say those sort of things versus like having a robot tell us, right? That's one thing that I think we really need to take away from this is tools like Educlimber know how important privacy can be and is. It just is for our students, for their families, and for our staff and everybody involved. And so it's not just any old tool that you're going to find on some random website. Instead, this is proven to be effective within school districts, and it's really about how the administrators want to use that information to better the experience for a student and staff.
Yeah. And then again, you think about your administrators, and they need guidance as well. Like, what are the questions? What are the ways to go at, helping with improving those gaps in education and growth that need to take place. So again, I just keep going back to that team effort to take a look at the data together, and just come up with what is, the priority or the priorities of your building, your district, of your classroom, so that, again, it can be personalized. It can be something that really helps parents, caregivers, the learner. I love that, where they get the chance to look at that data too. It's open to them. And that way it is really transparent. So it sounds like a really great tool, especially in high schools. And I know there's lots of data in college, but sometimes I think it might be something that is that has happened in the past. So we can look back at that information and make some decisions, and it can be predictive. But I really love it that in the high school or in the elementary or wherever you're at in a school setting, secondary or a primary, you can do it right now. That learner is right there, that you can help them.
Right. And that's the appeal of embracing that technology, is to say we have real-time evidence that is historical and predictive, like you said. That can only be achieved by allowing the technology to assist us, instead of being, once again, fearful of what technology can do. And I think kind of looking at AI as a data source and a data interpreter for us is really a great way for schools to advance and to serve the number of students that we have to serve. Class sizes are big, and we have many people that we need to care for in our individual rooms. And what's excellent too within our school is that we have a team of people. I'm not just myself going into Educlimber and looking at these results and having to make big decisions about an individual. I get to meet with a team, every single week, and we talk about students and their families, and we communicate with them. And it really is a powerful way to embrace technology. And I think it often isn't the way that we talk about data.
It's
just
not
don't.
a scary thing. It sounds like a very exciting thing, especially in your district. And then I love the part that once that team has figured that out and has identified whatever to help that learner, then as individual teachers in the classroom, you can also use different AI tools to get them to that point as well, as long as, and as also with yourself, because now you really know how to be more helpful as a overall to that learner. So great. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that background.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And remember that if you like our information, make sure you hit like, and we will see you next week.